What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor Season 40, Winners at War. Today we are going to be going over all of the ET Canada video previews that they posted on ET Canada like 2 weeks ago. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and I gotta say, these ET Canada interviews be tripping, because the shortest one was like 4 minutes long, and the longest one was 11 minutes long. And I was like, what's happening? Why do some people deserve 11 minutes, but some people only get four? And it's like, the people that you would think would get like the shortest interviews aren't the people that got the shortest interviews. I have
Yeah,
feelings.
it was like Kim Spradlin with one of the shortest ones, and everyone in the comments was like, yo, wait, we haven't seen her in so many years, and she gets one of the shortest interviews. Sort of whack, but
Especially because throughout the other interviews, and we'll be talking about this more, the person who I think was named the most as like a threat was Kim Spradlin. Like,
yeah.
the interviewer asked, like, who do you think had the best winner game? And like several people, I think like five or six, said Kim Spradlin. So
No, yeah, I definitely noted that on my notes as well because I thought that was super interesting. And I think that will maybe play into our boot list video that we'll probably be posting next week. Also, let us know if you want us to review the first episode of Survivor All Stars for next week, also, because so many cool things are happening at the start of February this week, next week. I am just so freaking excited. Everything cool is happening.
yeah, so this is really exciting. What isn't exciting is that I have to go back to school soon, but I will power through it if it means that I get to watch Survivor.
You
So
know,
we're gonna
I started college again this week, our last semester ever in undergrad, which is exciting. And the start of school means the start of Survivor because it's always like February and September.
yeah. But so we're gonna get started with these EC Canada interviews, and we're gonna start with the one, the only, Boston Rob Mariano. So
Yeah, low key, I was about to say Sester Nino. That is very awkward. But Rob's interview, I thought it was interesting. With some of the interviews, I thought it was very interesting to learn some of the facts that the interviewer asked them. So Rob and Sandra had 2 weeks from playing Island of the Idols, and then they went straight into 40, which I thought was neat to learn about. And like, wow, okay. So they literally knew that they were going to be on 40 in season 39. And so they had a lot of time to, maybe pregame, maybe hang out together on the island there. And so I think Boston Rob both and Sandra being in season 39, I think that will be potentially helpful for them going into 40 because they have seen different kinds of gameplay. They're sort of more caught up into the whole big moves era of Survivor since like Sandra did play in Game Changers, but like Boston Rob hasn't played in a while. So I think them being in 39 and sort of talking about the game for a month before actually playing the game is probably going to be helpful. And I just thought it was very interesting because I think in Dalton Ross interviews that I've been seeing on Facebook, they literally interviewed these people for other Survivor Season 40 interviews right across from the Rob and Sandra big totems that they had on Season 39. So I wonder if that will play into Season 40, just knowing that like Rob and Sandra both could have production on their side.
I thought it was interesting because, from what it sounds like, this is also information from Sandra's interview, is that Rob and Sandra were asked about season 40 halfway through season 39. And Sandra said yes immediately, but Rob didn't say yes until he had gone home and talked to Amber. So I feel like that was a really interesting like epiphany that came from all of this, because I kind of assumed that Boston Rob and Sandra knew going into 39 that they would be on 40, but that wasn't the case. So, yeah, that was cool. The interviewer did like talk to Rob, I think, quite a bit about his relationship with Amber. And like he basically was saying how he wouldn't go back if he didn't think that he could at least like get better than first boot. So I thought
Mm-hmm.
that was interesting. He knows that he has a target on his back, obviously. And I thought it was interesting because one of the things that he said in the interview is Amber can take care of herself. And so I think it's kind of different from the fan perception that like Rob and Amber are going to be like a team. Like both of their interviews made it seem like they would be fine being a team, but they would also be fine if they ended up on different sides. So
Yeah, and I think going off the threat level thing, I wrote in my notes that Rob seems very cognizant of his threat level, but he doesn't seem very cocky about it necessarily, which, I can appreciate. I feel like other people on this season come off in the way they speak very, very cocky about their status in the Survivor world. So I feel like I appreciated how Rob seems like a chill dude. You'd want to hang out with him on the weekend, get some drinks or something. He seems very extremely smart when he's talking about the game, the way he talks in the interview as well. They talked about Rob's book that he wrote about Survivor. And I don't know, just Rob in the interview, he just seems very friendly. Like I said, we all know that he's a very calculated player and he plays poker and he's very, very intelligent about the game. But if he can play up the like maybe I'm not so smart kind of thing, dad bod, I think he can low key pass. Like, I want to be his friend. He doesn't come off as calculated. And I think that's just like all that you need to do because perception is reality. And if he can come off as like, yo, I haven't played the game in a while, then maybe it can work. But also, the season 39 thing can be a detriment because everyone knows he was literally there 2 weeks ago.
yeah, I think another thing that was really interesting is that Rob said his strategy is basically going to be to get all of the like big threats together. And that's just like, he was like me, Kim Spradlin, Sandra Parvati. I think he said another name, but I'm not recalling who it was. But he was like talking about how like if they could get all the big threats together, that would be awesome. And then that's just like dream team. Because I know Rachel and I have talked before about how it's kind of lame when the like super big threats all get voted out first, and then you're left with like a C tier winner just because they're the ones that wasn't threatening at the beginning. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting because if the big threats, so like the top tier winners and like the people that are over the Survivor universe, often ranked as like one of the top 10 winners, can team up. I think maybe like we've talked about in our podcast episode 2 times ago, the podcast where we talked about the pregame relationships of everyone. And that's where we low-key realize that some of these big name players, like you might think Rob or Sandra Parvati would be first boot, but looking at the number of connections that they actually do have on the island, they could have a solid majority on their starting tribes, which I think is very, very fascinating considering first glance, you'd be an idiot to not vote out Boston Rob, Amber or Sandra, Tyson, all of them first boot. But I think looking deeper into these people's real life relationships, I don't know. I think Rob can do very well. And I think after Game Changers, all of the big name people sort of realize that they need to band together to vote out the lesser famous winners, the lesser respected winners, because after Game Changers, I'm sure that like Sandra and Tony do not want to be on the pre-merge trip again because then you just have that. And I feel like Game Changers definitely had a lot of backlash, I feel like, from the top tier winners because they all got voted out early and now they realize that like Sandra and Tony can't come after each other pre-merge if they want to make it far because then you have like all of these C-list winners or C-list players getting into the merge and pass. And I feel like they realize this after seeing Game Changers.
Oh, it's so hard. Rachel and I have like an order that we want to go in for these interviews, and it's so hard not to jump just immediately to Sarah, who was the winner of Game Changers.
We can do it. Let's go, Alyssa. Sarah.
Oh my Lord. Sarah, like in her interview, she called herself the best winner of all time. And her reasoning was that she had beat Sandra, who was like the ultimate winner. And that means that she's the best winner because she's the only person who has beat Sandra. And I was just like, Sarah, that's not how that works, like at all. And someone in the comments of that video posted, like, Sarah beat Sandra, Tony beat Sarah, and Sandra beat Tony. So like,
Oh.
where does the cycle end? So I thought her whole logic with like, I'm the best winner because I beat Sandra was just like so infuriating. Like, she wasn't that good of a winner, in my opinion. So yeah, that
Yeah,
was
I
just
feel like what I found interesting in Sarah's video, in my notes, I wrote that, like, hopefully Sarah does not come off as too cocky, because I think in the ET Canada video, she sort of came off as very, very confident in herself and very cocky, which, like, rightfully so. You know, you won Game Changers in a really great way, strategy, everything like that, coming back after getting voted out in the way she did in the first season. So it's like, okay, it's warranted. But I think just the way she was speaking maybe in the video is sort of like rubs people the wrong way. And I could definitely see how she can be very intimidating. I think, like, if I met her in real life, I'd be like, oh, she's low-key scary kind of stuff. And in the video, she also talked about having a resting bitch face. And I could be like, yeah, you know, I could definitely see that. So I wonder if it's just her personality is like that in real life, or is it coming off in the video? Because definitely in Game Changers, she made so many personal relationships. Everyone thought that they were her best friend on the island. So maybe it's a disconnect with the ET Canada interview and then how she comes off in real life. But I feel like that would be my sort of tick against her, is that she did seem very cocky or like unapproachable in the ET Canada video.
yeah, and I feel like there is a line between like confidence and cockiness, and she just blew straight past that line. And I was like, it was hard for me to believe her when later in the interview she was like, "Oh, I don't like hurting people's feelings." I was like, "You seem like you're just fine with hurting people's feelings." And I feel like it's weird when like people say one thing and you see like their attitude just seems so like diametrically opposed to that. So, mm,
Yeah,
mm,
and so Sarah is the most recent female winner, which in the game could be a target for her because, you know, if people are rewatching seasons, if they haven't been watching Survivor before getting the call to go back out there, you'd probably watch Game Changers as a way to catch up, similarly with Heroes versus Villains, because it has recent winners as well as like the next step elevated gameplay, because it is all returning players versus watching a newbie season kind of thing. And similarly with Second Chance, you'd probably watch those seasons, which I feel like could be a mark against Sarah in the game, because people might be nervous about that. Like, she's played this kind of elevated game before with returners and some big name returners as well. So I think that could be bad for her on the island. But I thought it was funny. People in the comments were like, yeah, if Sarah wins again, she's like the most recent female winner again. She was, and then now she is again, which I thought that was low-key funny.
yeah. What I thought was interesting was the interviewer asked like basically everyone what Survivor experience they wanted to have that they haven't had yet. And she was like, I just want to have fun in the game. And I feel like that was kind of a common like answer that they
Mm-hmm.
gave just because it's like a lot of people like Rob especially have played the game like quite a bit, and so if they haven't like had an experience yet, it's probably not that important to them. And a lot of people are just like, oh yeah, I want to have fun, I want to enjoy this time in the game, especially because a lot of them are like, I'm not sure I will come back again. So yeah.
Yeah, especially if you've played one time and or twice and your whole focus is winning the game kind of thing, then you have something to prove. But once you won the game, you don't really have as much to prove, unless maybe you're one of the winners that feels like they want to prove something to the Survivor community. But I feel like if you're going into the game with that kind of chip on your shoulder, I think that's a detriment. We'll talk about it when we get to some of those winners. But I think when you're going into the game like that and you're like, okay, my whole goal is to disprove the Survivor fans that like I'm not the worst winner of all time, then I think you're going to get lost in that goal and then not do well as a result.
Yeah, I feel like we talked before about how there like if you have a white whale on Survivor, as soon as you get past that, it's when you get voted out.
Stephen
So
Fishback.
yeah, Stephen Fishback, but also like Joe Anglim, he was like, I want to get to the visit. I want to get to the family visit. So yeah.
So, yes, the next interview we shall talk about is Amber. I think this interview is interesting because I feel like the interview was more focused on Boston Rob and her family life rather than her actual gameplay. And so I don't know if that was just me, but I feel like that sort of turned me off with the interview because I'm like, okay, even though, yes, Rob and Amber are very famous because of their marriage on the season, I think, you can ask Amber some of her own merits in the season and not just have her whole interview basically focused on her husband.
Especially because she beat Rob. Like, I feel like people don't talk about it enough that Amber like beat Rob. So yeah, I was kind of the same way. I thought it was interesting just because like she talked about how it was like a once in a lifetime experience that she got to have 3 times, and like she was really glad that she like met her husband on Survivor, blah 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 blah. But I think it isn't like highlighted enough that Amber hasn't played for super long, and that like her view on the game can change, especially like watching other people play. So another thing I thought was interesting was Amber and Sandra have never met each other before. They met like before the game started, which I thought was interesting because like Rob and Sandra seem to be pretty close. So it's like weird that they wouldn't have like met each other's spouses. It kind of makes sense because Sandra doesn't live in Boston. So it's like they really only see each other at like Survivor related things. And I assume that like Rob goes to Survivor related things. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting because Amber says that Sandra is the person that she would want to vote out first in the game, kind of thing. And then that really throws a wrench in the podcast Alyssa and I did 2 weeks ago because we thought Amber and Sandra would team up as like the big name alliance kind of thing on their tribe. And maybe that's not so. If Amber does not like if Amber does not like Sandra, she says Sandra is not likable, sneaky, not good at the physical challenges, and would want to see Sandra go home early, like she wouldn't be sad about it. I think that could cause some problems over on Sandra's tribe if someone like Amber doesn't like her and would start some kind of faction to get her voted out. But I feel like maybe more likely Amber and Sandra can work together for the first few votes because the big name people realize that they need to band together, and it's sort of like, okay, we're willing to work together until 18 people are left and the tribe swap happens kind of thing, then like every person for themselves. So I think that will be very, very interesting if they do team up or if they don't team up come the first episode. And also, I thought it was really interesting when Amber is talking about bringing old school back. I feel like a lot of the interviews that we've seen from the older players have been saying that they want to bring more old school back into the game. And so I feel like it will be very neat to see coming up in 2 weeks. So I guess after the first few votes, we'll definitely see whether an old school game will play out or whether a new school game will play out. And I think loyalty definitely will be something that people are looking for. A lot of people mentioned Yul as someone who is very loyal, and Yul even mentioned like he wants to use his loyalty as something that he can barter with other people. And so I think that's really, really neat to think about, people using like, yo, I'm trustworthy. Let's potentially ride this out to the end.
Yeah, I don't think that Amber would like start something against Sandra,
Yeah.
but I think it's one of those things where it's like if she does go down, like it's not going to be like the end of my game. Like she's not pinning her hopes on Sandra. And I think that it's realistic to like want Sandra gone early. I think Rob or Amber said that Rob had told her that like you need to be careful around Sandra. She's like sneaky or whatever. And I don't think that's wrong. I don't think that Amber would be wrong to like want Sandra out, but it also didn't sound like she was actively against Sandra. It just sounded more like she was aware of how powerful of a player Sandra can be. So
Yeah. Like if the winds blow in that direction, she's not going to be stopping anything from happening.
Yeah. So,
Now I'm in the dark.
oh,
So we could talk
Rachel's
about,
lights
I
are
know,
motion activated and she always ends up in the dark. Or did the lights like
Sandra.
go off?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. So poor Amber, poor Sandra. I feel like it's hard when like everyone expects you to have a relationship and then you don't. So that could be interesting for both of them to navigate, where everyone's like, "Oh, I thought Rob and Sandra were so close," and then Amber's like, "But I'm not Rob." So
That's true. So moving into Sandra's ET Canada video, this was interesting because Sandra said she liked watching Rob on Island of the Idols, like how to cook coconuts, how to make fire, listening to all of his advice. Um, she says, yeah, that Rob and Amber, something changed because Rob said no at first. So something might have happened that like Rob thinks he won't be the first boot kind of thing. And she also mentions the big targets need to stick together because she doesn't want to see game changers happen again. And I thought that was very interesting because I feel like just from this interview and everyone else's interviews that like Sandra is so freaking schemy, kind of like always playing the game. In Adam's interview, he says that Sandra calls the winners right after they win to like invite them to the winners circle. So I feel like she's been schmoozing people ever since literally maybe she won her first time, especially after she won her second time. So she knows a lot of people, and she's probably one of those people that pregame calls everyone on the season to like say, let's be in an alliance on the DL kind of thing. So I think she just seems very snaky.
yeah. Another thing I thought was interesting about Sandra is that she said that she learned from the people who came to Island of the Idols because they like had like new and fresh strategy ideas that she hadn't heard of. And I thought that was cool because it's kind of like even though she hadn't played since Game Changers, like she got kind of like the perspective of players, and so she could kind of keep up with where the game was moving as far as like I don't know, new strategies, new advantages, whatever, because like yeah, she's just with them. So I thought that was cool. It seems like Sandra really used 39 to her advantage even before she knew she was going to go on 40. So yeah, I'm really interested to see if like the new and improved Sandra does better. Because like I wasn't really sure what change she made between heroes versus villains and game changers, like whether or not she did anything. So yeah,
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. And I wonder if she'll go into season 40 with the whole Queen stays queen mantra, sort of touting her legacy, or whether she'll go in with the more heroes versus villains. I don't do anything around camp kind of thing. Don't remember me. I'm not here. And so maybe a mix of both. I feel like once you are a two-time winner and you're so in the survivor world, that's probably very difficult to hide in the background, especially on an all-winners season. Sandra's name did come up a lot when people were asked, like, who's the best winner besides yourself? A lot of people did mention Sandra. And I don't know. I just think her scheming since literally the dawn of time would make me very, very nervous, because if she's calling you the day after you win your season, then you've got to bet that she's calling everyone else the day after they win their season. And I think that would just make me very antsy, and I would not want to deal with that, even though she's a great survivor player. I'm like, I do not want to deal with that.
yeah, it's kind of like when she has her fingers in too many pies type thing. So,
Yes.
so
So
speaking of people that got like mentioned a lot in the great winners thing, we already mentioned that Kim got like brought up a lot and Sandra got brought up a lot. But a name that I was surprised came up often was Jeremy's. Not because I don't think that Jeremy is an amazing winner, but just because I feel like Jeremy really gets shafted a lot when people talk about amazing winners. And so I was really excited that people were talking about Jeremy as a good winner, but also like kind of scared because you don't want them having a big target on their back and they
no,
come in.
yeah. When I was thinking about my winner picks to plan for this boot list that we're going to be doing next week, And then listening to other people talk about Survivor, a lot of people think Jeremy, Michelle, Wendell are all going to win season 40. But then I was thinking, if a lot of the fans, the viewers, random people think that Jeremy, Wendell, Michelle are going to win this season, don't you think the people on the island are going to think, oh, this person is probably going to be very well liked by the community. They could win this season. We need to vote them out, because I feel like when you're playing 2, 3, 4 times, you've got to probably be thinking in the way that, okay, how is this going to be edited? Who is going to get these story arcs? What are the fans going to think? What is the jury going to think? Because once you play the first time, I feel like you start to think in that 3D aspect of like, this in at the end of the day is a TV show, and I think I've got to bet that like these winners are smart enough to see Jeremy as a huge threat, which is so sad because I do want to see Jeremy go far in this game. But even listening to his ET Canada video interview, he is so friendly when he's speaking. Like, he seems so fun. No wonder he is so likable. Like, I want to be his friend. Just him talking about his kids on the interview, I was like, wow, I want to be there. He seems so cool. So like, if we realize that as viewers, you've got to bet that the other winners can see that in him, and then you can't let him get to final 3.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, the winners are going to be distracted by all the other like big people they have to take out. And it's like, nah, man, these winners, they have enough brain space to be able to think about like, oh, Sandra's a threat and Jeremy's a threat. Like, they know that everyone is a threat, I think. So,
Especially like being a winner and you just do a little bit of data analysis on other returnee seasons, and you can see that like usually it's an under the radar female winning. So like, okay, we need to vote Michelle out. Or like Jeremy won his season in Second Chance, and so he was a little bit underrated because he didn't make it that far in San Juan del Sur. So it's sort of like, Jeremy can't really go into season 40 with this sort of same kind of, you don't know my entire game, because now he's played an entire game. And I thought it was interesting. Jeremy wants to continue the meat shield tactic that he used in Second Chance, which I thought was cool. So he stopped working out, he started gaining weight, and then he listed Tyson and Tony as meat shields.
yeah, I thought it was interesting because Jeremy won unanimously, and he was like, oh, I'm not really that worried about it because I don't think people like think about it as much. And I was like, and then he mentioned there was someone else who had won unanimously, Adam. Yeah. And it sounds like the way they were separated before the game started was it was the guys and the girls who were on like separate islands or whatever they were doing to separate them. So the guys all knew what other guys were playing, the girls all knew what other girls were playing, but they didn't know like cross gender stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting in the video as well. Jeremy says that he could bond with Adam because they both got unanimous votes. And this was a very neat way, I think, to think about connections, because I don't know, I personally don't think like, oh, we got the same number of votes at the end, haha, let's bond. But like when you're out there, probably literally anything you can use to bond with someone else if you don't really know them or if you've never met before. So I thought that was interesting and shows that Jeremy's thinking ahead.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see Jeremy play again. I really hope that he like does well and isn't automatically just like cut off because he did so well in Cambodia, but fingers crossed.
Yes. So speaking of people who are thinking ahead, next we're going to talk about Tyson. I think Tyson had the best interview. Low-key biased though. He's just so fun and charming. I just love the way he talks. He's so funny. And he was talking about pre-game lies that he would craft in the game if it comes to it, to try to get the target maybe off of him or get the target on someone else. And so he was talking about like, oh, peeping Bootlist in people's journals, or the Parvati lie that relates all the way back to her husband and other players and stuff like that. Or even like, oh, Boston Rob and Sandra were offered X amount of dollars to come back and you're getting offered less. And so I thought like, damn, Tyson, okay, that is some out of the box thinking to get people voted out. And I think that level of thinking we didn't necessarily see in any of the other video ET Canada interviews. So I was like, okay, yes, Tyson, let's go.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting because Tyson's lie was like 4 layers deep because it was
Mm-hmm.
like he talked to Aris, who talked to John Fincher, who talked to Parvati, and so it's like that way you have enough like plausible deniability because it could be like, oh, Aris lied to me. Oh, John Fincher lied to Aris. Oh,
Yeah.
Parvati lied to her husband, which I guess isn't as plausible, but it's like that kind of thing. Or if you tell a lie that's like simple yet complex enough,
Mm-hmm.
it's not on you if it turns out to be a lie because you're like, well, I just heard it through the grapevine. So, yeah.
Yeah. I just thought that was some next level thinking. It was so freaking good. Tyson also says in the interview that to prepare, he's a dad now. He did puzzles, reading books. He walked barefoot to like make calluses on his feet. I was like, okay, that's funny. And I thought, I don't know, it was interesting when he was explaining the rock draw that happened in Blood versus Water. He like ran through all of these scenarios, like 20 seconds in his head. And it's just, his video was so personable. Like, I would want to be his friend in real life, kind of thing. That is the one thing I got from these interviews. I'm so excited to see Tyson play again because he, I feel like, can come off as very not intelligent because of like the weird stuff he says. But I think he's deep down very, very smart, and he plays it off as like stupid because he is a jokester. And I think that can bode well.
It's not even that deep down. It's just like you look past one layer and it's like, wow, this guy like thinks. Like his whole thing about like running scenarios with the rocks, like Rachel mentioned, like I can't imagine being like sleep deprived and starving and dehydrated and being able to do that math in 20 seconds. Like Tyson is underrated, I think. So it's fine.
Yes. So hopefully Tyson makes it far, even though he has a lot of connections on the season. Well, it's going to be sad with the Bootlist, but we'll be hopeful for Tyson.
Yeah, we'll be hopeful.
So next, we're going to be talking about Parvati. With Parvati's video, she just seems so likable too. And I was just drawn in when she was talking. So I can definitely see how in her seasons, people can get like wrapped around her finger because the way she talks, she just seems very, very personable and likable. And she just seems very aware of how people view her. She talked about online polls, how other castaways might see her. And so I think that's very, very good considering she's probably going in with one of the biggest targets on her back. She says, easy first boot kind of thing, but like maybe not if you're thinking about it, because if you vote Parvati out, that just means, okay, maybe another female is going to be the next one on the chopping block because the biggest threat is gone. And she says that she wants to target the more subtle players. And so she says she's thinking of someone, but doesn't tell us who. And probably someone like Michelle, like we're saying. If someone is so personable, like I think Michelle is, and plays the sort of under the radar game, Parvati's smart. You want to vote them out because Michelle is definitely the kind of person I could see making it very far into the game if she's not voted out pre-merge.
Yeah, I thought Parvati was we say interesting so much, but I
I
thought
know.
it was interesting because she was talking about how like she wanted to bring out a side of herself that she hadn't used before. Just because like the people who have played with her have seen like the flirty side of her, they've seen the more competitive side of her, but there's like other sides to her that she hasn't brought out in the game. And if she plays a different game, it's harder for people to like be able to predict her or whatever. And so or know how to counter her. And so I'm interested to see like what her different game might look like. So
Yeah, she also mentions being a mom and having the mom bod. And I think that is something that a lot of these winners can relate on this season. And also not a like tick against anyone, because I feel like being a parent usually can be like, don't bring them to final tribal because they had a hard upbringing, their parents, single parent, whatever. But now, since literally almost all the cast have children, I think all the parents can bond together because, you're going to miss them. You're going to be talking about them all the time. And everyone can just tell stories of their little ones running around. And so I feel like a lot of people will be talking about their kids out there, which might be a mark against all of the people who don't have kids or maybe can't relate in that way. But I feel like you could try to insert yourself into the conversation if you like babysit or had some kind of child upbringing, do some work with children or something to talk about kids. I don't know. But like, I thought that was very interesting how I feel like the parents are going to be bonding together. And it was also, what's another word for interesting? Very neat. I use that as my second one. So it was very neat to see. That doesn't even work there. But Sandra and Parvati mentions her losing to Sandra in Heroes versus Villains. It seems like the online community talks about the whole Sandra versus Parvati, who should have won thing a lot. And so if, Parvati is bringing this up now, Sandra's probably got to think about it. She's probably read all those posts of like, oh, Parvati should have won, yada, yada, kind of the stuff. And maybe there is some beef there deep, deep down that like Sandra will not let Parvati get further than her in the game kind of thing. And Parvati doesn't want to let Sandra get further than her in the game. I feel like deep down on a very subconscious level, maybe there's something there that like they want to squash any of the rumors that like the other person should have won over them.
Yeah, I hope that it stays like a subconscious level and not a conscious thing, just because if they start going for each other, that's not going to end well for either of them. But
yeah, until the merge, and then you can go after the big dogs. Every person for themselves after that. Pre-merge, I think big names have to stick together, otherwise Game Changers 2.0.
Yeah.
So next, speaking of big names, we have Tony. So Tony is going into season 40 with a very different mindset than he went into Game Changers with. This time he says he is not going to think about anything until the game starts. He says he reflected on Game Changers and he wants to chill out. And so I think, okay, good for him. Tony, if he chills out and he talks slow like he did in his interview and he's not talking a million words per minute and being all sort of very hyperactive, I think Tony can make it past the first boot and not be the first boot out of the game. And so if Tony doesn't go crazy on the first day, doesn't go off and look for idols, he stays in camp, he makes some bonds, then it could bode very, very well for him. And if he just chills out and shows people that he is a reliable person to align with, because I feel like in the other interviews when people would talk about Tony as one of the better winners to win out of the list of winners, they said they maybe don't want to align with Tony because he's unpredictable. So Tony, if he's chill, if he talks slow like he did in the interview and he comes off with that kind of New Jersey personality, but he's chill, it can go well. And I think I liked watching his interview because he wasn't acting like super wild. He was sort of calm.
Yeah, and like you could understand what he was saying. And I think sometimes Tony goes so like blah 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 that you like lose him. And maybe that's the point, to like distract and confuse people. But yeah, Tony was interesting. He was talking about how he was excited for there to be like big clashing egos. And I was like, oh no, Tony. Oh no, that's not what you want. Because you're one of the big clashing egos, buddy.
Yeah, he also says he doesn't want to align with the people who believe in the Survivor fame, the people who go on other TV shows or write books and stuff. So I feel like the people that go on to be semi-influencers after the game, he does not want to align with. And so I feel like that's a lot of people on the season, though, because I feel like maybe it's just because Alyssa and I watch a lot of Survivor stuff, but it seems like a lot of people go on and do things after the show, sort of like The Bachelor, The Bachelorette. Literally, all those people quit their jobs and become influencers. But Survivor is different. These people are still normal, and I don't know. The Bachelor, Bachelorette people are just wild. I do not. Those people are crazy. But I don't know. The influencer type people, would that be like Boston Rob and Sandra? Because I feel like those two talk a lot about Survivor, and definitely Boston Rob has a book about it. And so maybe that's the people he's alluding to. He didn't mention names, but Yeah, I don't know. I feel like
I feel
Tony
like you
does
can't talk about someone writing a book about Survivor and not think about Boston Rob, though.
that. Yeah, on the DL, he's talking about them. But like we're saying, we think the big names need to stick together, and hopefully Tony's on board with that once he hits the island, because he's not thinking about anything until they get into the game. Hopefully he's on board with that. Otherwise, I feel like we could see a lot of the favorite named players go home very early, but we have Edge of Extinction.
Yeah, we have Edge of Extinction. So among all these Survivor like greats is Survivor fanboy Adam Klein. So
My favorite.
yeah, Rachel loves Adam. Uh he said that he'd
Oh, my
always
light
be
went off.
nervous to play Survivor. I thought that was cute.
My light went off.
Again? Oh my goodness.
I know. That was only like 10 minutes since the last time it went off.
You're saving the earth, Rachel. It's fine.
Yeah, stupid Berkeley rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Keep going on your thought.
But yeah, he said that he was nervous to play Survivor, and I thought that was cute. But he also was like Tony and was like, yeah, I'll deal with the big egos. And I was like, I feel like when you get into the mindset of like, oh, everyone else has an ego, but I don't, that's when you really get into trouble. Because if you think that you're like the pure one who doesn't have an ego, then that's when your ego starts getting in the way of you. So,
Yeah, so I thought this interview was interesting with Adam because he talked about that he wants to be underestimated because, like we're saying, these winners are going in with different levels of threat. You have the big names, you have the quote unquote lesser tier winners. Obviously, everyone deserves to win the game, but it seems like certain winners are not as well respected in the Survivor universe because of how they won the game or like them. And so Adam was saying that the backlash did bother him, but he's taking it as a positive for going into this season of Survivor. And I thought, okay, that's a really great way to look about it. I wish in like Michelle or Ben's video that maybe they touched upon it, because I think being maybe disliked on the internet can probably be very hurtful and take a toll on you. But like at the end of the day, you won Survivor, and not that many people can say that, and people dream of doing that, and you won the check. So like everyone else can hate on you on the internet for all we want, but like at the end of the day, you're a winner and you get to go on season 40 and everyone else doesn't. And so I thought that was a very, very good outlook for Adam to have, because like Alyssa and I were saying earlier, if you have that chip on your shoulder, that white whale of like, I need to go in and prove all the haters wrong, that like, oh, I actually deserve to win this game, or I'm not a Survivor player that's bad at the game, then I think you're going to get voted out early because you're just so focused on that one thing that you're not in the right headspace to play the game. So I really like that for Adam's video, and every superfan's dream he is living out.
yeah, I hope that Adam gets to do well on this season. I hope that he does get to prove that he didn't just win because he's a sob story. So,
Yeah, and so with this also, I thought it was interesting that Adam also is thinking ahead, and before he played in Millennials versus Gen X, he was using the preseason interviews to drop little seeds of, oh, what if I played again kind of thing, similar to Sandra calling all the winners after they won. In the interviews, Adam says he wants to play with someone like Denise, and so he was saying he could use that for season 40, and I was like, damn, okay. If you ever go on Survivor once, you need to be thinking long game, apparently, because you never know when you'll be invited back, when these relationships might be needed, and you got to use what you got. So if you're applying now in your like little bio intro question things, you need to just be like, I want to play like all the winners. And then you can point back to that later when you're playing with them. Like, yo, I said I wanted to play like Denise back in 2016, and now 2019, we're out here on the island again. We're going to align.
yeah. So, I hope that Adam gets his dreams.
Yes. And so I guess summer news, Alyssa, I haven't told you this yet, but Adam is doing a watch party, and it'll be fun, and I'll be going. And so that will be cool. Literally 4 years ago, Adam was or is subscribed to our podcast here. And then we noticed that he was subscribed. So then I reached out because I'm going to school in Northern California. And at the time, he was still living in like the Bay Area. I think he moved to LA now, but he's back for the premiere. And so then we like met him, and then he called Alyssa, and Alyssa didn't answer the phone.
I was in the middle of something. But anyways, yeah, no Survivor players live in or around Baltimore, Maryland, so rip me, I guess.
Yeah, so that was very cool. So freshman year of college to senior year of college, seeing Adam play again, it's like full circle of our college experience. And so I think that's something that I will always remember from college.
Yeah. Anyways, Wendell. I thought it was funny that Wendell talked in his interview about how he had to call Dom and like ask him what to do in this season. I was like, Wendell, babe, you're not really helping the perception that you only won because of Dom. Like, but apparently Dom told him he needed to like chill out a bit, so that was fun.
Yeah, I think Wendell's interview, he used the charm. I want to be his friend. He seemed so fun in the interview as well. And then at the end, it was like, okay, low-key flirty there. Like, use it. And I don't know. I like Wendell. Seems like he's a very fun person, especially if he, I guess, does quote unquote chill out and doesn't build furniture for everyone and doesn't do all that. Maybe he can fly a little bit more under the radar. But I feel like being a newer winner sort of can be a detriment. So like the Wendells and the Nicks out there, I think that can hurt them. But yeah, I don't know. I like Wendell. He wants to maybe align with like Jeremy, Tony, Tyson. And then he also says he's willing to cut Jeremy at a certain point because he knows that you can't go to the end with Jeremy. And I just think that would be so fun to watch on TV. Like, okay, Wendell and Jeremy, he relates Jeremy to like an older brother, uncle kind of thing. And so father, son go out there, and then son cuts father's throat.
Yeah. Wendell also mentioned, what did he mention that I was going to say? Oh yeah, he said that his one goal was that he wanted to orchestrate a great blindside before he like left the game, and he was like, yeah, in Ghost Island, we kind of just had a hit list and we went down the hit list. And I was like, I feel like Wendell has so much to learn as a Survivor player and as a winner because his first season was like a relatively easy season, I feel like. So
yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to see Wendell play dirtier this season. That's what he says he wants to do. And I feel like people won't expect it. So it could be really good. You think, oh, it's Wendell, the dude who, went to law school and now makes furniture. And then he cuts some throats in his free time. I would love to see that from Wendell because he can be like, oh, so flirty, so charming. And then stabbed in the back, and then you're voted out, and then on to Edge of Extinction. I think that would be some nice character arc for Wendell. I would love to see it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm here for it too. I would also love if Jeremy stabbed Wendell in the back, since Wendell's talking about like stabbing Jeremy, like just flip the tables on him a little bit. It's fun.
Yeah, so next we are going to be talking about Ben. Ben, in his interview and then from his TV screening, I feel like I've seen a whole different side of Ben. I don't even know. Just in his first season he came off, I feel like it's very callous, sort of rude, very mean, sort of scary almost, like not someone that I would want to hang around. And then in his ET Canada video, he seems like he's fun. Like he talks with enthusiasm, which some of these interviews were like sort of very boring to watch because these people were freaking monotone. And I'm like, okay, sure, maybe in your personal life you aren't talking in front of a camera all the time, but like at least smile in the video. And so I was like, okay, good for Ben. He is laughing. He's joking in this video. He says he wants to prove his haters wrong and he felt bothered by it. But like, if he can be this big teddy bear that he came across as in his ET Canada video, I don't know. It's like I would want to be his friend, and maybe he won't be the first boot because, on the other hand, I'd also want to vote Ben out first because he doesn't have that many connections to people being a recent winner, and he's good at finding idols. So, like, he's played on these beaches before. We don't want that to happen again. Let's just vote him out early. But I don't know. I think Ben just did a whole 360 from first season to ET Canada video. I'm like, I don't even know this dude.
I feel like one of the reasons Ben came off as unlikable in his first season was because they needed to like play up the whole Ben versus Chrissy thing, and they needed them both to be like kind of equally villainous if they wanted it to be believable. Like when it got to the final three, you wanted to believe that either Ben or Chrissy could win. And I feel like if they had made Ben like the teddy bear that you saw in the ET Canada video, it would have been super obvious from the beginning that he was going to be the winner, just because like everything would point to that. So I feel like that's part of the reason why he seems so different in the ET Canada video. I mean, I've always been a fan of Ben, and I hope that he does well in this game. So
Now all the people on the internet are going to come and hate at you.
I've said that I was a fan of Ben literally as we podcasted through the Heroes, Healers, Hustlers season. So if y'all want to hate on me, hate. I like Ben.
Yeah, I think the whole 360 was interesting. Ben also looks like he lost a lot of weight from his ET Canada video. He's very, very thin. If you go back and look at his pictures for HHH, he was a lot bigger. And so maybe that goes into like the different personality kind of thing. And he's also a stay-at-home dad after he won Survivor. And so Tyson is also a stay-at-home dad. And so that's something that they could bond over if they ever end up on a tribe together. Similar, like we were saying, the parents thing, I think all of the parents will talk about their kids and they can bond over being a mommy or a daddy.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things about having older people on the season is that you are going to get people who are like more likely to be like further on in their life. So, yeah.
Yeah. So speaking of, we have Danny. She says that she wants to keep the target all off of herself. And I could definitely see that happening, being from Guatemala, like literally the season that is never talked about in the Survivor universe. Like, did this season ever even happen? We don't really know because no one ever talks about it. And Danny is the first person out of that cast to even come back and play again, which is very interesting. But yeah, I could see this as a good thing. Like, okay, Danny won't be pre-merge boot. She'll make it far. But I think if you keep the target off of yourself that much, then you sort of fall too much into the background, into the point of being a GOAT for the season. And I could sort of see Danny falling into that role of someone who hasn't played in a long time. She wants the loyal game, and then she falls into the loyal vote category, which turns into being a GOAT, which is sort of sad. But I could definitely see Danny being like in the final three and then not winning.
Yeah, I feel like Danny could definitely be a GOAT. I don't know. I feel like I'm not as attached to her as I am to other winners, just because like Guatemala wasn't that great of a season. I feel like you said, it's not really ever talked about. So like Danny is one of the winners where I wouldn't be like devastated if she was the first boot. But I do definitely agree with what you said about her possibly being like a GOAT role, which is kind of sad. She also has kids now. So
yeah, like she seems like a cute, nice lady, but just from the ET Canada video, I don't know. I only had 4 bullet points for her. I wasn't really getting much more.
yeah, it just seemed like a lot of it was about like her personal life recently. Like she recently lost her dad. Like she's had some struggles in her family. And like one of the things I thought was I disagreed with was that she thought that the game was better because it had all like the new like twists and turns and advantages and stuff. And I was like, Danny, please, no.
Up to a certain point, the twists are good. So I think it'll be interesting to see Danny play again, because I don't think she mentioned in her interview like if she can keep up with the new school kind of game. She says she watches the show, but like I think that'll be very interesting in how it translates to the game.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people watch the show and don't really like get it. So we'll have to see with Danny. I feel like she's one of the people that's like a lower tier winner, as we say. So yeah.
Yeah. So going next, we have Michelle. In Michelle's video, she is also one of the other people like Jeremy and Wendell who seems very fun, cute, friendly. Like, I would want to be your friend. She seems like a hoot and a holler, like, let's hang out. She, like how she won in her season, has a good social game, but she says she wants to branch out from just having the purely social game. So I feel like similar to Wendell in playing the more strategic cutthroat game, I would love to see Michelle not just play the social game, but also play the cutthroat strategy game. And I think that would be so cool to see. And like so many people are thinking, okay, Michelle can make Final Three because she's a little bit underrated. People will forget about her. People don't think she should have won her season, kind of thing, that she could make it very far. And if Michelle can cut some throats and stab some people and vote people out like that, I would love to see it. I'm all here for it. I liked Michelle's video. She's one of the people that has a good natural camera presence, and I like that. Like I said, some of the other videos were very boring because people didn't smile, they talked monotone, but she at least, gave some of her personality in the video, and I really like that. And so I could definitely see how she has such a good social game because she just seems friendly.
Yeah, I'm hoping that seeing more of Michelle will make me like Ko better as a season. One of the reasons I didn't like Michelle's win was because I feel like we never really saw much of her personality. It's kind of like she's very much like Tommy in the sense that like she was such like a vanilla edit. And like even seeing her in this ET Canada interview, like you said, like she has a personality, and I'm kind of upset that we didn't see more of it in Ko because like she won that. She should have like been given a better edit, I feel like.
Yeah. So not much more else from that video. She says she wants, or the best winning game besides herself was Kim. And so just adding on to the long list of people who think Kim was the best winner besides themselves.
Yeah. So kind of makes me worry for Kim, but it's fine. It's fine. So the next person that we're going to talk about is the least recent winner, I guess would be the way that you phrase it. I don't want to say oldest winner because I don't think, yeah, he wasn't the oldest. And he's still not the oldest. But the least recent winner, Ethan, who won season 3, appeared on All Stars and hasn't come back since. He and Amber are kind of similar in that way, except I feel like Ethan has been a lot less like in the Survivor community. Like I feel like Amber's kind of still been around-ish because of Rob, but Ethan kind of just like yeeted out. So
Which, yeah, probably due to personal things. It was interesting. Ethan says that he is very starstruck with some of the winners, which could bode well, also maybe not bode well if you're so blinded by, like, oh, Boston Rob kind of thing. But if you can sort of separate, oh, I love them as a winner, but separate Survivor and love them as a winner, then I think he can do well. I think the problem that people will have is if they are super fans of a winner or whatever, and then you fall into the trap of being too right-hand man to the winner, that like you become the GOAT out of that. So maybe, hopefully, Ethan can separate that, and similarly for every other player on the season. It seems like Ethan prepared a lot for this season. I think probably the older players that are coming back are more nervous because he has a lot more riding on this opportunity since he hasn't played in so long, especially with all of his health concerns that he's had, which I am concerned about because maybe Ethan might overplay too quickly because you get on the beach, your adrenaline is running, and then whoops, he gets voted out because he overplayed too quickly, which I would be very sad if that happened. I think he needs to just be calm and chill. Also, Ethan seems like a very genuine, down-to-earth dude, which is good, but also in a cutthroat season that we've been having now, being too loyal might be bad. And I think that's where Ethan might fall into some traps if he becomes like too genuine, down-to-earth loyalty, which is
yeah,
sad.
I feel like a lot of Ethan's thing focused on like what has happened to him in between when he played games because he's like we have alluded to, he got diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma and he said in his interview that one of the things that he did was he Heroes versus Villains was like airing while he was getting his treatment and he said that like one of the reasons he wanted to like get through the cancer and like continue living was because he wanted to live long enough in order to play Survivor again. And I was like, oh, that like made my heart feel some kind of way. So yeah, I feel like I'm overly attached to Ethan for like sentimental reasons, just because I feel like that would be an amazing story, and not
Which is
necessarily because I like love him as a player.
Yeah, which is why he can't make it to the end because I feel like everyone realizes that, especially being the what oldest the not most recent winner of the
The least
season.
recent winner.
Yeah, the least recent winner. So I think other people realize that. So I think Ethan has a lot of pros and cons. I think he can make it pretty far, but some of his detriments are being just too friendly and maybe not knowing how to play the cutthroat game that might be required for this season. Being too trustworthy, yeah. But yeah, no way he's making Final Three because I think in an all returnee season where the freaking jury can be 17 people on edge of extinction, it's a popularity contest. Sure, it might come down to outwit, outlast, outplay, but I think deep down, if you don't think a person is deserving of the money at a fundamental human basis level, you are not going to give them the money no matter how well they played at the game. And I think Ethan is the person that, like, even if he played an ass game, you low-key might want to give him the money because he's had such a growth story from playing so
And
long
also,
ago.
he used the money from his first time playing Survivor to found a charity. Like,
He's just too wholesome for this
yeah, it's
world.
like they call JT Survivor's golden boy, but I really think it should be Ethan because Ethan is just like I love Ethan. So yeah.
Yeah, so moving on, we have Denise. So she, I think, has some good talking points in this video. She seems like one of the more bland, talky people on the camera. Like, she sort of talked a little bit monotone, which I was like, oh, this makes the video long to watch if no one's putting any inflection into their voice. But I think it was interesting to listen to her talk. Like, okay, even though I'm Denise, I feel like Denise is pretty high up in the winner ranking status of people that people with longer resumes getting voted out would be more helpful. The way she talks, she's just very calm and very chill, and that probably goes into her daily life job being a therapist. And so I wonder how that will translate onto the island because, like we're saying, I think her video was sort of boring because she was so calm and chill. But maybe on the island where everything is hectic and she brings that calming presence to the island, maybe that is beneficial for her. But like just the way she came across on the camera, I don't know. It was a long video to watch.
Yeah, and I feel like watching her season, she wasn't that like monotone. So I'm wondering if it's just like some people don't like interviews. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping that she's more interesting if she gets like confessionals or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a good way. She was talking about when she's out there, this is her job kind of thing. And I thought, okay, that's a good way of thinking about it. Similar to Tyson, bringing it back since we already talked about Tyson, but bringing it back to Tyson in the video, like Survivor CBS is posting all these photos now. We mentioned it in a few videos back, but like the screenshots of when Jeff says $2 million and then everyone is screaming, Tyson is literally just standing there, not even jumping, no expression on his face. So I feel like the people that really view this game as a job can really separate like friendships outside the game, pre-game alliances, everything, and really take everything day after day after day after day. And I think that can bode really, really well for Denise if she can separate like, okay, this is my job. I'm out here for 39 days. I need to bring home the money because I had to close my therapy practice and all that. I think those people can do very well versus the people who are like, I want to have fun. This is a vacation. And that's not necessarily for season 40, but I feel like a lot of other new player season, half the people are out there for clout or like internet fame.
Yeah, and I think it was interesting just because, like, Denise's whole thing was like she'll probably do better this season because she doesn't like the rain. And like Fiji's very sunny. And I was just like, this is such a weird thing to be talking about. But yeah, Denise was another one of the people who said that she thought Kim Spradlin was a good winner.
Yeah.
So it's
And
just that.
the most interesting point was Denise saying that she can't lie. I was like, wait, you can't lie well, okay. And so she says she maybe wants to pair with somebody sneaky. And I think that would be very interesting. Like we saw her first season. No one would, I think, ever in a million years pair Malcolm and Denise up together. I mean, yeah, Malcolm and Denise up together. And maybe it was because of circumstances on their original tribe. So there go my lights again. I am interested to see who Denise pairs up with, and is it going to be an unlikely pairing, or is it going to be someone who's more similar to her? I feel like the unlikely pairing could bode very, very well, and she says that she wants to pair with Sandra because Sandra has a consistent game.
Yeah, I think it's interesting though because like Denise was like, "Oh, I'll be with Sandra until Sandra like stops being useful." And someone commented on the YouTube like video was like, "Everyone who says they can keep using Sandra until she's not useful loses to Sandra." So I hope Denise doesn't like fall victim to that trap and end up being like Sandra's second fiddle. So
That's true. Maybe another potential goat.
yeah, which is not fun. But
Yes. So
anyway,
next, we are going to,
Yule.
yes, Yule, who was wearing Crocs in his video.
I did not even notice
Oh
that.
my God. When he put his leg up and I saw the little Crocs logo, I was like, frick, what a king. Wearing Crocs on Survivor. That is like next level meme lord. I just thought that was so funny.
I feel like Yule didn't do it for the meme though.
I was like, yeah, I feel, yeah, no, it's such a meme though. Yule, he's so freaking well spoken, very, very eloquent, very calm as well. He talks about reaching out to other minorities as well and using big egos as shields. You know, I just like his vibe. He just gives you that calm vibe and he doesn't talk necessarily in that monotone way. And so I could see him being able to make friends on the island and being a more further back winner. He says he wants to use like, oh, I was loyal in my game, and then try to get someone else to like bring him along. Like, oh, I'm loyal. Like, don't vote me out.
I feel like it's also the coolest things about Yule's interview to me were him talking about like what it meant for him to be an Asian
Mm-hmm.
American on television, how he felt like a role model for kids. But then also I would say like a solid chunk of his interview is him talking about Parvati.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I think they talked about Parvati for at least a minute because he was talking about how he really respects Parvati's game because obviously he beat her and then she went on to win. And then she went on to get second place in Heroes versus Villains. And so I thought that was interesting. He obviously has a lot of respect for her game. And I'm wondering if that means that they could maybe be allies as well, just because she's the only one that he knows. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
so I feel like just Yule's whole experience too, and then yeah, being the only Asian American male winner, I was like, okay, yeah, very useful and good, I think, for him to speak about his experiences. And that's something I hope that we can see in the edit of Survivor, because I feel like we don't really get to see a lot of that conversation. And I would love to hear Yule talk because he's very, very well spoken.
Yeah, I don't have anything more to say to that. I just feel like there are some survivors where it's like, man, I wish that I could see you on something that wasn't a reality show. Like I feel like if Yule made his own podcast about like literally anything, I would listen to it just because I like hearing him talk. So
Yeah. So We both like Yule. It'll be interesting next week with the boot list and how we put Yule, and that'll be a sad time because then Alyssa and I will have to separate people we like versus how we think they'll fare objectively in the game of Survivor. So next we're going to be talking about Sophie. I thought it was interesting. She was 21 the first time she played and then 29 now. And so a lot more life experiences. She was talking about switching her job and all of that. And I was like, damn, okay, she will definitely be a changed woman going into this season. And so I was like, okay, that will be very, very interesting. Also, she talks about being an introvert, and I was like, okay, very relatable. That is me. And
Like
then
she
she
was
says,
like, I don't even want to see my friends sometimes. I was like,
that's literally me. And so she says that she has to work on building relationships with everyone and not just being introverted. And I feel like that's probably the biggest struggle that I would have if I ever went on Survivor, because I will just cancel plans because I literally want to watch Netflix or like not see anyone. Literally just going to class every day is tiring, and that's enough socializing for me.
yeah, I agree with that. I thought it was cool. Sophie talked about like her 21-year-old self playing kind of like a different person playing. Like she has those memories still, obviously, but like she's changed so much in the 8 years since then. And I feel like, especially, you change a lot in your 20s. Like there are other players who have gone like longer between their seasons, but they maybe weren't as young as Sophie was. So I feel like that's definitely a factor. Like Michelle talked about it too, being 24 versus 29. So
Yeah, I feel like Sophie was one of the more forgettable ET Canada video interviews. I feel like the second time that I was watching, because I watched them all one time for fun, and then I went back and watched them again for taking notes. The second time watching, it was just hard to get through, low key. So I don't know. I wonder how that will translate into the island. I could see Sophie going home early just because she doesn't have the connections. And if she can't make those relationships with people, it might be an easy vote out. So I don't know. She doesn't really come across as like, oh, the bubbly, friendly type. And that definitely goes into her talking about being an introvert.
yeah. So speaking of videos that I wish we had like more of, like Sophie, I wish that we had more like emotion almost. But Kim's video was literally 4 minutes long. Most of the
Yeah,
videos were like 8 or 9. Parvati's was 11. Kim's video was like half the length of most of the other videos, and I'm like, why did you shaft her like this? Like it didn't seem
straight up.
like she was doing poorly in the interview or anything, but
Yeah, like Kim seemed very friendly in the interview. She was leaning into the interview. She seemed like she had a lot to talk about. And then, oh, timestamp of 4 minutes. Like, I watch everything on 2 times speed also. So it's only 2 minutes long. And I was like,
me too.
damn, we really got like cheated out of Kim's interview. And so she
And it all
relates.
felt very like basic too. Like
Yeah,
she was
no,
like, I want to be able to play with idols. I'm like more patient now that I'm a mom.
no,
Cool.
literally, yeah. I have 3 bullet points for Kim. She equates Survivor to childbirth kind of thing, like PTSD, you block it out of your memory. And so multiple people can probably relate to that if they've given birth to children. And then she says the best winning game is Sandra. And I just wish this interview had more, because she's got to know she's probably going in with a big target on her back. Like Alyssa and I've mentioned this during this podcast, so many of these other winners have mentioned Kim as the most winningest winner out of everyone. And so I would want to know, like, what is your strategy going into this season kind of stuff? Because 4 minutes, we are all going in blind.
Yeah. So it was a shame that Kim's interview wasn't longer, just because like I feel like she's someone that everyone wants to hear from. And then like
Yeah.
the next person we're talking about, Nick, I think his interview was like 7 minutes long. And like not that I don't like Nick, but like, does he really deserve 7 minutes when Kim's like 4?
Yo,
No.
Nick looks so different. His hairline is like way back now.
Also, his accent is much less thick. And like he makes a joke about it in the interview, but I literally was like thinking to myself, like, didn't he have a thicker accent before? So yeah.
Yeah, like Nick seems friendly. but he can't do the whole Southern Charm thing now. And considering he was almost going to be the first boot out of his season, I wonder what he'll change to not have that target early. And like, obviously, he did something right after not being the first boot off of David versus Goliath. But since he doesn't have that Southern Charm thing, and I think he used that a lot to make it further in the game, like, oh, I'm not intelligent because I have this Southern accent. And like now everyone knows he's a lawyer. You can't really fake being non intelligent now. And I sort of worry for Nick being an early boot because he doesn't have those connections and he's the most recent winner out of the field that like people might just be like, oh, first in, first out. It's a revolving door. Like, peace out, yo. And I don't know. He can't do his whole nicknaming of the alliances anymore either because people would catch on to that. And I don't know, his whole nickname for him and Yule as the geniuses in the ET Canada video sort of turned me off. I was like, oh, is this like low-key racist?
Yeah, I wasn't sure about that. I mean, at least he knew that Yule was specifically Korean, because I feel like there's this thing where white people are like, oh, they're Asian, and that's like where they stop. So I think it's like slightly better. He was like, oh yeah, Yule's Korean and this is a South Korean show, rather than being like, oh, Yule's Asian, the geniuses is Asian. Like,
Yeah.
so I think it's also like an okay homage because Yule is like stupid smart. So
Yeah. And I'm like, nah, I don't know. You just can't be naming these alliances. If anyone saw your season, they're probably going to think that you're doing it with everyone else. So, like he said, unless someone asks him for one, he's not going to name it. I was like, okay, that's a good strategy because if you're doing it with someone and they didn't ask, they're probably going to think you're doing that with everyone you talk to, and that is sketchy. But
yeah.
I feel like Nick can be an early boot. I don't know. I just don't see his longevity.
Yeah, his whole strategy is just being a free agent, and I feel like that only works like deep in the merge when it's like everyone's looking for numbers because the difference between 5 and 6 is very slim. So I feel like
Yeah.
if he's on the outs and there's like an alliance of 5 and an alliance of 4, they might use him for like 1 or 2 votes, but no.
Yeah. I think Nick has an uphill battle because he's the most recent winner and he can't do the Southern Charm thing. I think that's his biggest detriment. And now he just has an accent.
Yeah. So last but not least is Natalie.
Yes. So Natalie, she seems very, very friendly in her interview as well. She talks about representing the Southeast Asian community. So I'm like, yes, okay, let's work it. Um, For some reason, she's been thinking this season has been men versus women. Literally in every single interview that she does, she talks about the men versus women lines drawn, which isn't necessarily too far off the ball considering they are in pre Ponderosa separated by gender for this. And so they didn't see everyone else. So I was like, okay, it's not too far off. Maybe they're doing a one world esque kind of thing. You know, it's just sort of funny since we all know it's not separated men versus women. And then she just keeps mentioning that in every single interview that she's doing. I think my one downside for Natalie's interview was mentioning just Parvati and the sort of like, oh, I'm not like other girls kind of thing. I get along with boys and it's not the flirty way. And then she's like, Parvati only gets along with the boys because she sleeps and cuddles with them. And I just thought that was sort of not cool.
Yeah, yeah. I just feel like it's also assuming a lot of things about Parvati,
Mm-hmm.
like assuming that she's going to play the game the same way. And yeah, I also wasn't a fan of that. I feel like her whole interview was talking about how it would be different not playing with Nadia, which is like true, but also not really what I wanted to hear about. So
Yeah, so I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to see her and Jeremy play because they're starting on the same tribe together. But yeah, I don't know. Just the whole Parvati stab sort of turned me off.
yeah, even though she said that like Parvati was a good player, it just felt kind of disingenuous after dissing her. So
Yeah, so this is us going through all 20 of the winners for Survivor Season 40. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of these ET Canada videos. Who did you like seeing and who did you not like seeing their interview for? Next week, we will be back to talk about our boot list for the season. So freaking get ready for that because we have a lot of thinking to do with these 20 winners. And Australian Survivor starts
Yep.
soon.
Yep.
Yes, in 2 weeks. So that
Yeah.
is freaking exciting as well.
Yeah, so have your boot list prepared in time for our next podcast so you can see where you agree with us, where you disagree with us, and we can have a great conversation together. So we'll see you
Yeah.
soon. Bye.